Okay, so I just hit record. So off we go. So good afternoon. I'm Danny Glazer, one of the co-founders and program directors of the Green Business Partnership. Scott Fernquist and Yana Petrikova, who I think said hello already, are joining me on the call. So we are thrilled to have you here today to learn and participate in a discussion about sustainable food shopping and beyond with author Kate Bratskeir. Did I say that right? I hope.
Yeah, that was perfect.
Yay. So for those that are not familiar with the Green Business Partnership, it is a mission-driven nonprofit membership organization that awards official green business certification and fosters a thriving green business community. So for 12 years now, we've been guiding businesses and nonprofits on practical steps to incorporate sustainable practices into operations. We focus on 7 critical areas: organizational commitment, energy, transportation, land use, water, waste and recycling, and green purchasing. And those last 2 are very involved with food. It's an important part of those sections. And what we love about Kate's book is that it's welcoming, forgiving, and practical. From the outset, we are not shamed about our food choices and shopping behaviors. Rather, we are encouraged to learn and do better. This is a positive approach that has also been deployed by the Green Business Partnership for many years. And people and companies really appreciate a positive approach and not getting negative and shamed about what they have not done. So kudos to Kate for figuring that out. So it's my pleasure to introduce Kate and Hillary officially. So Kate Bratskeir is a journalist who covers food, health, and the environment. She's the author of a pocket guide. Oops, Dan knocked it down, sorry. A pocket guide to sustainable food shopping, and recently moved to Austin, where she lives with her partner and dog. She is also my daughter-in-law Jana's best friend. Hillary Millman, owner of In Better Words Marketing, is the GBP's marketing consultant and works with many local businesses and nonprofits in the same capacity. She's passionate about protecting the earth and working to give all people fair access to its resources. And take it away.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Glad to have you here. Hi, Kate.
Hi, Hillary.
So let's start off. Give us just a little overview of the book for those who haven't read it and your purpose in writing it.
Sure. So as Danny said, I'm a journalist and I've been writing about food and the environment for about a decade. And throughout my reporting, I found that as people become more interested in doing their part to fight climate change, marketers have gotten especially good at finding ways to confuse us. So I wrote this book hoping to give people some clarity. I like to think of it as a no BS guide to wasting less food, decoding food labels, and understanding the sneaky practices from the industry, so you can hopefully not fall for them.
Awesome. I thought I was like a pretty smart and educated shopper before I read this book, and I wasn't. So, there's always, obviously with any subject, there's always more to learn. So I was really grateful to have it. So we have over 40 people on this call. So the first question is, can our personal shopping habits, just the 40 of us, one at a time, actually make a difference that's worthwhile? And how perfect do we have to be in our efforts to make a little bit of a difference?
Sure. I love this question because the answer is yes, we can make a difference. Every single person on this call can really make an impact. There's this quote that floats around the sort of zero waste and sustainable community. And I shared in my book too, but I'm going to quote it because I think it's really impactful. It goes, we don't need a handful of people doing sustainability perfectly. We need millions of people doing it imperfectly. For me, this saying kind of gives me permission to mess up. I kind of let myself off the hook. I don't need to walk around all day kicking myself for using a plastic straw instead of a metal one. We can't all be perfect. But one way to amplify your impact is to talk about it, which I'm glad we're doing today. When you talk about it with your friends, your coworkers, your community, they start to understand why your car is stuffed with tote bags, or you seem to always bring a metal fork to take out, and they might be inspired to do the same. And so that really adds up.
I love that. So I like that our individual actions collectively can create, can actually create a demand for change. I mean, and really the only way to do that is through our shopping and spending habits. I think about that every time I go to the store and I see something that I'm buying that I believe and know is good, and it's mostly sold out. I'm thinking, oh, good. Now they know that this is a thing we want more of. So I think that one of the things I like best about this is that it empowers us to shop based on our own rules, rather than, like you said, like the marketing tricks, like the way the store is arranged to get us to buy something at the checkout or because it's at the end of the aisle, and to stop with like those impulse purchases that aren't always as positive. You know, it's like we get to set the rules instead of them being set for us. And I also wanted to mention that in terms of the green business partnerships work, the same theme is at play here. The more, like you made the point about inspiring others, the more business owners who discuss and display their commitment to sustainability, you know, email signatures, websites, things like that, the more they'll inspire other businesses. And the more consumers will come to expect sustainability to be like a basic requirement instead of an extra thing, which I think is important.
So true.
You talk about the dangers of greenwashing in the book. Tell us what greenwashing means and how it negatively affects growers and consumers and the environment.
Yeah, I am a bit obsessed with greenwashing. I love spotting it out in the wild and calling it out and making a big fuss. But if you don't know what the term means, greenwashing is a marketing technique used to make people believe they're buying something that is sustainable while the product doesn't actually deliver on its promises. It's really frustrating. Marketers do sneaky things like they will rely on certain natural looking colors for their packaging or use meaningless words that can easily trick the average consumer. And I have a recent example that I've been frustrated about, and that is the Nature Valley bar. I'm sure everyone knows those really excessively crumbly granola bars that have been around forever. They just launched a recyclable package that is promoting really hard all over social media. I feel like it's following me. And so the wrapper, it says it's recyclable, and that's great, but it's actually made out of plastic. It's called polyethylene film. And this needs to be brought to store drop-off centers in order to be recycled properly. So it is not something you just easily throw in your recycling bin and call it a day. So even still, advertisements for the wrapper show people going on hikes and snacking on this Nature Valley bar like they're saving the world and being so green. But in reality, this hiker has to put that wrapper ostensibly in their pocket and then remember to bring it to the grocery store down the line to be processed properly. I'm sure most of you would agree that's not something you do on a day-to-day basis, and I can almost promise you that's the fact that's true, because we already know this drop-off model doesn't work. Less than 9% of plastic gets recycled as is. And I bet that General Mills, who owns Nature Valley, knows very well that their new packaging isn't going to do much for the planet, but it might do a little bit more to get them customers. So that is greenwashing. And there is one upside to the practice, which Hillary kind of touched upon, which is that greenwashing shows us that people are really interested in doing better by the planet. Marketers wouldn't be trying to sell us these greener products if we weren't demanding them in the first place. So it's a sign that the consumer demand is there. But where it's harmful, besides just, you know, being a bunch of BS that no one can really follow through on, it affects every aspect of the supply chain. It undermines the food and the products that are actually doing the right things. It leads consumers to feel hopeless or confused. And it also promotes this term called wish cycling, which is when we put things in the recycling bin, sort of cross our fingers and think like, oh yes, this will get recycled. And even I'm guilty of it. I'm like, this bin like looks as if it might be turned into something else. And that's something that will happen with the Nature Valley granola bar, a wrapper, and it happens a lot.
Marketing.
These
terrible marketers, they're the worst. Hang on a second while I just change my name on my Zoom description here. So I just wanted to make sure that I heard something that you said right. Did you say less than 9% of plastic gets recycled?
Yep, that's correct.
Wow. Okay. That's sad and terrible. Okay. How do you have any thoughts about how local business owners and organizational leaders, like the people on this call with us today, what they can do to ensure that they're not contributing to greenwashing, you know, like from a professional point of view?
Sure. I think leaders really need to make sure they're not making false promises. And this will mean something different depending on what kind of business or organization you're running. But you certainly don't want to present yourself as green without investigating what's true. So you need to watch what you say, how you market. I also think being transparent about the fact that there is always room for improvement is really important. But you know, anyone on this call is already miles ahead of their competitors. You're taking the right steps in learning, and that is definitely something to be applauded.
Awesome. So at the partnership, we always say that sustainability is a journey rather than a destination. So in fact, so Jill Singer of Jill Singer Graphics is on the call with us today, and she designed the partnerships logo. And back when we were all working on that, there's I think it's a W, because of course I'm not actually looking at the logo, although I could be. And we, you know, liked the fact that that kind of looked like a road with no beginning and no end. It kind of, so, we, you know, thinking about that, it has to be a continual effort. And we just had an event talking about the importance of continual greenhouse gas reporting. So once you are certified, or even if you're not, to be measuring your emissions and reporting on that. And we understand that not everyone can do that, but there are a lot of different things that people can continuously measure, like employee commuting or waste. And it's just something that's very important as part of the process, and to ensure that you're not kind of just earning any kind of, you know, doing any kind of green thing or earning any kind of sustainability certification, but then letting it go after that. It's something that you have to keep up. Danny, did I miss anything there?
No, you did such a great job there. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Okay. This is one thing that I feel very strongly about. Food labels obviously require a really critical eye. So can you give us an example of like a word or language that we might see on a food label that is kind of meaningless?
Or I could give you so many examples, and it's so frustrating, and it sort of goes back to the point of greenwashing, and just the fact that like we're all trying to make better choices, and there are just these endless obstacles put in our way to make us have to work a little bit harder, but we can do it. So a word sort of more in the nutrition health sector that is absolutely meaningless is healthy. You can put the word healthy on a bag of neon cheese doodles, and studies show that people will actually buy more of these than the counterpart, because words have power. Another one is natural, also meaningless. But then more in the recyclable kind of realm, there are words like biodegradable, compostable, sustainable, absolutely meaningless, especially when the label lacks any official certification. So that's like one aspect of my book that I talk a lot about, is you really need to start researching what are trustworthy sources. And for compostable in particular, there's a certification called BPI compostable. And when you see that on a package, you can be pretty confident that it'll naturally break down into the environment over a year. BPI has a website that can be a really great resource, because you can use it to check if your favorite products are actually certified or not. So just, you know, you see these words, you want to believe them because it makes shopping easier, but you need to look at them critically.
Yes. So it's actually kind of upsetting to realize that most of those things don't mean anything. It's one of the reasons that I really love this book, because it helps me not make those quick decisions on the spot and allow myself. So if I'm here at my desk, I know those don't mean anything, but when I go to the store and I'm rushing and I'm, you know, now wearing my mask and eager to get back out of the store, or I'm distracted, I probably am gonna like grab that healthy thing, even though I know it's not actually healthier. So for those who haven't read the book yet, can you see there's like space in the end, you know, to like actually keep track of, the things you've learned and your thoughts and how you want to prepare for shopping, so you don't fall victim to those kind of ploys. Save money, make healthier and greener choices. Ignore all those fake comforting words. All right. So here's another topic I know you're passionate about, Kate. What is the myth of consumer choice, and what role does this play in larger conversations about equity?
I love
actually,
question.
you know what? Mike just asked a question. I want to back up first. Why isn't this mislabeling? And I was supposed to ask this question anyway. Why isn't this mislabeling like healthy naturally? Like, why aren't we protected against that? How come it's not illegal?
So the FDA does work to protect us as best it can. Like, there are some words that are regulated, especially on egg cartons. There are words that you really need to go through a certification process in order to use certain words, but the FDA can't regulate every word in the dictionary. So it sort of happens over time. I think healthy is actually currently under investigation to really have a definition and to find out what that means. But then the FDA has to come up with standards for that word that sort of a lot of people can agree upon and move on from there. With the compostable and biodegradable stuff, the FTC, which is the Federal Trade Commission, they sort of send out warnings to companies like, you can't say this unless you do this. I think it's pretty ineffective, and we just need more policy and regulations to make this something where we can trust labels that we read in the grocery store. But it's a challenge for sure.
And I know we're going to get to questions later, but just because this one is so timely and I happened to notice it when it popped up, if something, and we talk more about this word later, but if something says the word organic, for instance, that has to be somewhat legitimate to be, like, is that a word that's currently monitored?
Yes, absolutely. Organic has specific regulations. And like you said, we're going to talk about this later. Organic doesn't always mean better, but there are definitely some like bullet points and that have to be accomplished in order for organic, whether it's beef or vegetables, to fit the bill.
To have that label at all. Okay, great. Now let's talk about the myth of consumer choice and how that plays into equity conversations. So what is the myth of consumer choice?
Yeah, I think Americans love to cling to their independence. We're all for the freedom of choice, and there are so many different kinds of bags of chips in the snack aisle because we get to pick which one's our favorite. But not all Americans have the same access to this choice, so it is a myth. I'll give an example where a parent decides to feed their kids McDonald's over a bag of fresh veggies. There are so many factors that affect this decision for an individual family. One is that a bag of carrots or veggies and a Happy Meal cost around the same thing. And if you're in a position where you can't spend your money on, endless sources of organic greens, you're going to choose the Happy Meal every time to feed your growing kid because it has more calories and will keep them full. At a certain point, in this sense, choice isn't really voluntary when you're sort of choosing the option that makes sense for you and your family. Another example, while one family may be able to walk to the farmer's market to get fresh veggies, another may have to drive an hour or not even be able to access them at all. So this freedom of choice assumes that we all have the same access, the same financial resources, and the same amount of time to spend making these choices. And we know this is not true in our country.
It's not even true in our county.
Correct.
You say something in the book, or you quote someone in the book and it's something along the lines of that we are in a system where you basically have to pay not to be poisoned. And that's something that, really struck me. And, through working really with Danny and the partnership, I know that this holds true outside the grocery store. So access to clean water, having land to use that's not covered in trash, breathing air that's not polluted. So much of that is driven locally and worldwide by your economic status. And that is something for most people that you're born into, not something that you choose. And, you know, that's not right. And it's one of the things that led the partnership to spend a good portion of this last year kind of revising it and defining its mission and values, and mission and vision and values. You know, not everyone on the call is very familiar or fully familiar with the partnership or this new language. So I just wanted to share a little bit of it. So the vision that the partnership sees for the world is sustainable business as the global standard to ensure that all people and communities have equitable access to a safe, clean, healthy, and nourishing environment. And the mission, like the daily work, is to engage, empower, and educate organizational leaders and staff to accelerate sustainable business. This is one of the ways that we get to that world where everyone has access. I won't read you all the values, but the very first one is the most important, which is that, to me, my opinion, all people should have access to sustainable products, services and experiences, and we must recognize and take action to address the disproportionate effects of climate change on economically distressed communities and communities of color. So it's really important to recognize, I think, that choice is not a choice for everyone. And I saw, you know, a comment pop up about being disappointed with some things in Trader Joe's. And I know I have a number of friends and colleagues on this call who have been talking about going to a new market that opened recently. I think it's in Dobbs Ferry, and all of the great options there. But again, we have to pay attention to the fact that not everyone can afford to shop at those places or can even get there. They're just not. I mean, I live in Dutchess County, and good luck even finding a fresh vegetable within 20 minutes of my house. So, you know, we just have to keep those things in mind. So back to some useful tactics. You suggest starting the sustainability journey with a waste audit, which is something that the Green Business Partnership also requires members to do to earn certification. Why is this waste audit so important?
Yeah, I know that waste audits are a big principle of a lot of sustainable organizations. So I'm excited to hear that it's such a big part of the Green Business Partnership. But so to understand what this means, if you want to do more to help the planet, one of your goals should be to waste less and to produce less waste. So you need to understand where your problem areas are before you can start to tackle them. And a waste audit will help you start to assess. So it's literally going through your garbage is what a waste audit is. It sounds like it's you know, fancier than that, but it's not. So you start by examining your trash over a period of time. You can start with just your kitchen trash, just to sort of focus around the waste that you're producing while cooking and just making food. So you go through your trash and you see that you are throwing away a lot of plastic wrap. After you sort of assess what you're wasting the most, let's say it's this plastic wrap, you think about what are the alternatives you can make. You can choose to waste less of this resource. So maybe it's time to invest in reusable wraps or find another alternative. And you do this with every product you find. Are you constantly throwing away small yogurt cups? And if that's the case, could you buy your yogurt cups in bulk to reduce the amount of packaging you're buying? Could you make your own yogurt? Like there's always more steps you can take to reduce your waste more and more.
Awesome. So normally I'd probably make a face about going through my garbage, but while we've been stuck inside during quarantine, it actually feels like something that might be fun, which is a little sad, but I don't know, this sounds like if you have children, a really good job to give them like a great project. So I think something I would make my nieces do. So the Green Business Partnership recently put out a call to members to submit videos where they share some like industry or sustainability tips or trends. And we got our first one in a few days ago from the Hendrick Hudson Library, and it addressed this exact issue. So it's a really cool demonstration of like an easy, effective way to monitor the amount of waste you produce. So I don't want to give away the farm, but we're going to share the video all over the place during the next week. And so if any of you are looking for ways to do this, because you could easily do the exact same thing they're doing at work, at home, and whatever you're doing at home, we hope you'll bring back to the office when and if you go. So it's fun. There's some easy ways to get this stuff done. So I personally feel, I apologize if you all can hear my dog clawing desperately at the door to get in here. It's really pathetic.
Is he going through the garbage?
Not yet.
Doing a waste audit?
I feel really terrible when I throw something away uneaten. So how big of a problem is this, and how can I and others who have thrown away that bag of salad we had really good intentions about, how can we stop contributing to this problem of throwing away, of wasting food?
Yeah, wasting food stinks. Like, you need to acknowledge your guilt. Like, I wish I didn't do this, but then move through it, because you can't let these feelings hold you back from actually taking action. So Hillary, it's okay. Let's move on. After you sort of get through the emotional aspect of it, you could apply sort of these similar principles to the waste audit to your wasted food. So you notice you keep throwing away the same bag of lettuce week after week. Maybe it's time to stop buying this lettuce and be realistic with what you're consuming and what you're not. Another action you can take is to start learning ways to keep your food fresher for longer. Like, if you're buying a bag of lettuce and it goes bad, there's probably a smarter way to preserve that lettuce in the first place. And there is. One of my favorite very simple food reduction tips is when you bring home a bunch of bananas, to separate each banana from the bunch, because it actually keeps the banana from ripening as fast. There are tons of these like little simple tricks that actually make a difference. So it's a matter of learning about them and then doing them. Then there's also composting, which I am personally obsessed with. It's more important than a lot of people think. When you throw an apple core into the garbage, you assume that it will just break down into nature and life will continue, but that apple core actually ends up in the landfill, where because of the way it's trapped and how oxygen can't really get out of the landfill, it starts to produce a gas called methane, which contributes to global warming. When you compost that apple, it reduces emissions and also benefits nature and the soil in so many different ways. So I highly suggest sort of learning about composting and seeing if it could work in your own household.
I love that. I'm a big composter because I garden. Not only because I garden, but I love having that stuff to mix back into the soil, because I only have one spot to grow veggies in, and mixing all that composted food back in restores, some good stuff to the soil. In the partnership's recent newsletter, we shared that there's a home composter and rain barrel sale coming up. It's Westchester County and the Greenberg Nature Center have partnered up to do that. And I guess they're deeply discounted. So pick them up on Friday, April 23rd at the Nature Center, and the 24th in Saxon Woods or Depew Park in Peekskill. I have absolutely no idea, reservations, how any of that works, but I believe the link was in the partnership's newsletter, and we can share that information with anybody who needs it. A few years ago, I know that the Greenberg Nature Center had a lot of really great resources on their website about composting. So if you're interested, and you can do it in a very small space. I have a barrel. You really don't need a tremendous amount of space, and it does not smell at all, which I know is something that convinces people not to do it, but it really, there's no bad smell outside.
And you can keep it in your freezer where it really doesn't smell.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, see? You think you know something, and then you talk to Kate and you realize you know nothing. So that's basically the theme of this.
It's because she came from New York City, that's why.
Oh,
yeah,
no.
There was nowhere else to compost. That's
yes.
So true.
I guess you can't like hang it outside the window of your apartment, like just dangling there in the wind. So
if you want to invite friends to join you, then you can. And those friends are rats and pigeons.
One of the things that I do now, like to avoid that, is like check the drawer to see what's going bad. And I make what I call like mystery stir fry. And I just dump whatever it is in there, and if it's not good by itself, just mix it with something else and feel better about wasting your extra veggies.
That's that is exactly what you should be doing, like make use of your food before it goes to waste. And that's such a simple way to do it. And then you have dinner. So that's brilliant.
And if you are going to eat Cadbury cream eggs for dinner instead of salad, like you said, just admit that to yourself and don't buy the salad. So
I don't think that's what I said.
Also that technique. All right. So in the book, you give a lot of great tips about how to choose different products. So let's talk about just a couple of those. So for instance, the produce department, we touched on organic before. You know, what about buying regular versus organic produce? Or when I have the option to buy a local apple versus an organic apple, how do I know what to choose?
Again, this ties back to the, consumer choice. It really depends on your own personal sort of situation, what resources you have, what access you have. I get this question a lot, and I know so much, like, we all want to have this prescription to do the right thing, and this one size fits all answer. Organic might be right for you, but local could be best for another family. I usually suggest, if you sort of don't have like a strong stance on this, to buy local when possible, because you could then talk to the people who grow your food and then also put your money back into your local economy. That doesn't mean local is better than organic, but I think it's a pretty simple rule of thumb if you are looking for a prescription of some kind.
And one important thing that like I didn't think about was, how far my food is traveling in terms of how is it traveling? Like that's using, gasoline in the truck, or it's on the airplane, and manpower and things like that. So there's just so much to think about. And you do a great job in the book of giving us all those things to think about. So we know that labels can mislead us versus health or sustainability. But one thing that I know you and I both feel really strongly about is being misled regarding the treatment of animals. So when we're buying meat or, egg products, things like that. So for people who want to eat meat, but also want to make sure that they're using sustainable practices or feel strongly about animals being treated humanely, is there any way to really know that?
Yeah, this is where certifications are like crucial. And there are so many different certifications. I list a lot in my book. And it seems overwhelming, but I think if you take 5 to 10 minutes to check out which ones sort of match your ethics, and then keep a list on your phone of, these are the 4 or 5 stamps of approval I'm going to check for every time I buy chicken. And once you start sort of doing this, you'll start learning about brands are acting within your personal ethics, and then you can stay loyal to them, and it'll be easier to shop that way. So it's like, like anything, it takes a little bit of learning and then sort of memorization of what is working for you and who you can trust.
One thing that I've done before is, you've seen this thing like grown on a family farm. So while standing in the grocery store, I've actually Googled like the name of the farm, and there's nothing on their entire website about humane treatment of animals. So that's the kind of thing that says, oh, it's a family farm. It doesn't mean anything. So it's really important to check those certifications. And one of the things, again, here we go about, kind of like equity and privilege, but locally, some of us are lucky to have access to farms or to butchers, where again, you can go and you can ask questions and look for yourself if you want to know how animals are treated and things like that. So really important. All right, milk. There's a million milks. Should we assume any non-dairy milk supplement, oat, almond, whatever, is better than cow's milk for health and sustainability? Can we assume that if we pick any of those other options, it's better?
I don't want to use the word better, but cow's milk is more taxing on the planet than any non-dairy milk. There's no denying that. I don't think that means like you can't ever drink dairy milk again, but if you are on this type of non-dairy milk journey, it's a good first step. There are nuances to every type of milk, even the ones that come from plants, and they all have their own kind of sort of consequences on the environment. So for example, almond milk is everywhere. Pretty much anyone can access it, but it uses a ton of water. But at the same time, it uses less water than cow's milk does conventionally. Oat milk is really popular now too, and oat milk emits fewer emissions than soy milk during its production process, but it requires more land and water. So there's actually this like kind of nerdy graph in my book about like this milk uses this much emissions, this much water, this much land, and there's no perfect milk as you can see. So again, this depends on sort of your ethics, and then even after the environmental factor, you want to see what other additives does this milk have, and do they align with how I want to eat and feed my family. Long story short, there's no perfect answer to what kind of milk you should be buying, but you do want to look into its effects on the environment, the company as a whole and how they're treating their workers, and then the actual ingredients in the milk to be able to make the right decision for you.
You've mentioned a couple of times, like the right decision for you and the ethics that you want to focus on. And Danny has been helping me, like shop for healthier, like personal care products and home care products over the course of the pandemic. She's my go-to expert. And it's really funny because, she showed me an app where I can look up, allergens and chemicals and things like that. And Danny and I have, many of the same values in common, but we differ a little bit on like how we rate them. So of course, like, to like what chemical is used or how sustainable is it? And I go right to, like, is it tested on animals? Is it cruelty free? Mm-hmm. So all of those things can be important to us in different ways. But that's, I think, the big point, Kate, is that the book informs you about all the different options, and you can weigh, again, what's most important to you, what's healthiest, best for your family, what's within the price point that you can manage, things like that. So it's really a tool versus telling you exactly what to do. It's a tool to help you figure out what to do. So when I get home from the store, I have my cloth bags, as I'm supposed to, but they're filled with containers. They're filled with plastic, cardboard. Is that okay as long as all those things are recyclable? We already know the answer to that.
Recycling uses resources and labor too, so it's not perfect, but ultimately it's better just to use less. So everyone's heard the phrase reduce, reuse, recycle, and it really should be in that order. So reduce, use less, buy less, reuse, keep whatever you did buy within your system for as long as possible, and then recycle should sort of be the last effort, because there are so many flaws in the recycling industry, and as we've learned, a lot of things are not recycled properly and sort of make the whole system flow not as smoothly as we'd like to imagine it does.
Yes. So I used to feel like I could do whatever I wanted as long as I recycled things. And then a year or two ago, probably two, because 2020 doesn't register. The Green Business Partnership hosted a really eye-opening event with Diane Chickering of Suburban Carting. And we learned, that this is really a global crisis. And I learned so much personally that there really is not any place for this stuff to go. It used to go certain places, they don't want it anymore. And even if there is a place for your recycling to go, getting it there is a high impact activity. I mean, trucks and the whole thing. And, other interesting things, if your neighbor's recycling isn't clean and it's grouped yours, it all ends up in the waste.
Then I started to come back to life.
That's good. I think we need somebody to.
A little sore, but not too bad.
So
for like 2 days after the first.
Yeah, it definitely like.
All right, somebody has to mute.
Yeah, that's
me.
So again, just to reiterate, we need to do the best we can not to purchase anything that needs to go into the recycling. So Danny, I know after you read this book, you immediately changed some of your habits. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, Kate.
I didn't notice.
No. So now when I go into the supermarket, I just bring my cloth bag, and for veg, I'm not going for anything that was wrapped in plastic or anything, especially in hard plastic. I'm just going to that section in the produce aisle where there's like lettuce next to beets, next to escarole. I'm just like getting the lettuce, not in a bag, throwing it on top of my bag, and really basically stopped as much as I can buying anything that is pre-wrapped in plastic. It was really easy. And I think in the book you said something about how like dirty, the whole process of getting like a vegetable from wherever it came from to the store, onto the conveyor belt, that, not to worry about that, just to go home and wash it, and, but anyway, that made a big impact on me. Also, the not believing triple washing anymore. I'm like, I'm kind of done. I'm over the triple wash. So.
Yeah, plastic produce bags, I think, are a really interesting case study because we use them for such a short period of time. We take them from the grocery store to our homes and then throw them away. So they're sort of like for show. They're like, oh, my fruit or vegetable that has come to the grocery store through trucks and manure and many people's hands is now being protected from this quick trip to the grocery store to home. I think it's a real psychological thing that we've just come to be used to over time, but we really don't need to put them in these plastic bags to transport them. We're gonna we're gonna wash them anyway, and should be.
Yeah, the plastic bag is just keeping all the disgusting stuff on it to bring it home with you because it's already gross.
Exactly.
I mean, one thing about the pandemic is definitely that it made me when I looked at the grapes, and normally, I always would have rinsed them off, but nope, now they're going into a bowl of soapy water and I swish them around like old school beating my laundry on a rock for 5 minutes before I rinse them off. So the book just solidified that for me. All right, so we have 2 more quick questions for you, Kate. What was the most surprising thing you learned in researching this book?
One of my favorite facts that I came across is that mussels and clams don't feel pain. As someone who doesn't eat meat, I do eat seafood every now and then. It was exciting for me to learn that these sort of mollusks don't have central nervous system. So there are some people who consider themselves vegan who eat mussels and clams, and it's a great source of protein, and they're pretty sustainable too.
That's awesome.
Oysters.
And oysters, yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. What's that quote? It was a brave man who first ate an oyster. I just had my first oyster 3 months ago. It was also my last oyster, but I tried it like a big
and delicious.
I get it. I understand how you feel.
Okay, so Kate, I think we're up to 50 people. If everybody on this call left here today determined to learn more about or do more about one aspect of sustainable food shopping, where would you tell them to start?
Well, my first comment to that would be to start small. You don't have to, redo your kitchen in order to start practicing sustainability. And I would really start with food waste and start with the food audit or the waste audit and see what you're wasting and what kind of changes you can make. They'll probably be really small to waste a little bit less. That's a really good place to start. Our country wastes about 40% of the food it produces, and 10% of that waste, a study recently just came out, showed happens in our own homes. So that's a really good place to start.
Awesome, thank you. So I hope that you are all informed and also intrigued to learn more about this. You can buy, and I think this was posted in the chat, but you can buy Kate's book online and at any major book retailer, including Barnes & Noble, Bookshop, and more. You can also request it from your local bookstore. And I think we're going to take a look at some Q&A now. I think we may have addressed some of the questions. Do we want to go through here? Danny, how do you want to handle this?
I'm turning that part over to Scott.
We've got a lot of questions. Mike, I'm ignoring your questions. Sorry. We've got too many. The first one was, who's the picture in back of you, Kate? But I don't know.
Sandy Koufax.
My father-in-law painted that. I wish I kind of knew someone was going to ask me that, and I should have asked him. I will respond later.
Looks like Sandy Koufax.
Okay, we'll go with that. It's Sandy Koufax.
It is Sandy Koufax.
A Brooklyn Dodgers, Los Angeles Dodgers pitcher.
It is Sandy Koufax. Good call.
So we can check that one off the list. I think you already addressed the issue with plastics at supermarkets. There were a couple questions about that. As we all know, those of us in New York, there is plastic bag legislation. These issues are local and come down to your policies and what incentives there are. But I think you did cover the waste issue pretty generally. I think that's very helpful. Jill had a specific question for her own situation in terms of when it's better to, for example, with paper, and if you have fireplaces at your home, is it better to burn the paper locally versus, you know, sending it to the recycling center? And I'm very biased because I heat my home with wood. So I told her right away, I'm like, it's better to burn it because it may not get recycled properly anyway. So, but she wanted to know your opinion.
I know that, you know, mass incinerators are not good for the environment. I do not know a lot about whether you should burn paper at home. I think you need to be cautious of what kind of paper you're burning. You know, if it has chemicals in it, you don't want to do that. But, you know, I don't have a fireplace, so I didn't explore that, but that's a really good question and one that I will absolutely look into.
Okay, thanks. Let's see, what other questions have you not answered?
Kate, do you know anything someone asked about with like almonds being produced for themselves or for almond milk? Did you come across anything about honeybees? And
yeah, so the big story about almond milk is that it can be really dangerous to the bee population because bees populate or pollinate the plant that grows almonds. And with such an interest in almond milk, manufacturers have sort of ramped up their need for almonds, and this has really messed with the bee population. There are farms and people that are doing it sustainably. It's probably not the ones that you're buying with big brand names on it. So it is important to research that as well. That's why almond milk kind of quickly got a bad rap, because people were so excited by it, but because of that, it caused manufacturers to sort of produce it incredibly unsustainably.
So thank you. So Yana actually asked a question that I've been wondering as well, and maybe other people on this call, about just different products. Like she's talking about toiletry products, but some companies are now providing the option for consumers to send packaging back, you know, via the mail, a way to make sure it's disposed of properly or reused or whatever they're claiming. Just wondering what your take is on that, since obviously there's transportation emissions and different things that come along with that. Do you think that's a form of greenwashing, or is it case by case?
I think it's definitely case by case, but I actually get very excited when, I'm such a nerd, but get so excited when companies offer that. You know, something that you're really not supposed to throw away is textiles, so like pieces of cloth and clothing, and it's not always stuff that you can donate to the thrift shop or anything like that. So there are companies that will take back their packaging and turn it into new packaging to resell. And I think if you can do that, that is so great. It is definitely not the answer, because that is not a sustainable practice. And ultimately, companies need to invest in infrastructure that allows them to sort of produce like a refillable packaging. So like you use the same plastic makeup dispenser for your blush over and over again, something like that. But it's a really good start. And I think if companies are willing, it costs money. So if companies are willing to put the money there, then definitely take advantage of it.
You know, I agree. And I think it's really helpful, especially with like specialized products that are so hard. Like the consumer doesn't know what to do with them, and then they're tempted to just like dump it the wrong way, which is obviously very harmful, like certain types of light bulbs or batteries or e-waste, stuff like that. So if they're willing to, you know, guarantee that it gets disposed of, I think that's great.
Yeah.
A bunch of questions about composting, but honestly, there was more of a discussion in the end, so I'm not really sure. I can't even keep track of all the questions. So if people want to unmute themselves and ask questions for the remaining 6 minutes, I think that's the best way to go. So if anyone has a pressing question, please unmute yourself and just ask Kate or whoever directly.
I actually have one, because somebody just mentioned that like Eileen Fisher takes their clothes back, and I think that H&M has a program like that too. So do you know anything, or do you or anyone else know anything about those like clothing recycling programs? Like, is that gimmicky, or is that something that's, you know, worthwhile? I know sometimes, you know, you have those donation bins, but they're not actually going to a nonprofit, or they're not sold. They're not getting to the people that you would like them to get to. So my personal opinion is if you have stuff that's in good shape, find an actual organization that serves those people and give the clothes directly to them. But what about the clothing recycling programs? Do we know anything about that?
Yeah, I've just started to get really interested in sustainable clothing. It's just like food. So Eileen Fisher, you can pretty much trust that that brand is doing the right things to sort of get the fabric out of the waste stream and produce new clothing with it. Something like H&M, it's fast fashion. The amount of waste that they produce does not match up to their sustainability programs. So I've been doing a bit of investigating into what sustainable clothing brands look like, and a lot of it comes down to treatment of workers. That's where it first starts, and then after that it is the materials they use. So it's like great that H&M has a recycling program, but it's certainly not enough, and it's so cheap and easy for them to do. So again, it's case by case basis all the time. But what people say in the sustainable fashion industry is that the most sustainable fashion is the fashion that's already in your closet. So like, even if you already have H&M, like you don't need to feel bad about that. You just need to wear it and try to make it last as long as possible. I know it's not a gratifying answer, but it's just how it is right now.
But it also goes to like the kind of like mentality of like consumerism and always needing a new thing. And I know there's a lot of libraries on this call, and one of like the very most wonderful things that I've learned about while working with the partnership is just the many great things that libraries offer to kind of push back against that. I mean, even like programs where older people with skills that some of us don't have are, you can bring your phone or your radio or your electronics there and they'll fix it for you, rather than saying, uh-oh, like something's wrong with it, I have to buy a new one. So libraries are such a tremendous resource in that regard, as are, I don't know, maybe some of our grandparents. But I think that's, it's just kind of a way that we can all rethink how we look at what we use.
Yeah. And a shout out, I know Kate's book is going into the Westchester Library System. I'm not sure if Jill is still on the call, Jill Davis, but I know that she made a move to put her book into the system. So awesome.
It is, Danny. I think it's already in.
It's already
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Can I ask a question, Kate, about expiration dates?
Yeah.
That seems to be, if it reaches the expiration date, it's like, oh my gosh, you got to throw out, but that's not necessarily true, is it?
No, I'm so glad you brought that up. Expiration dates are really a guess by the manufacturer and a very safe bet, because no food company wants to be sued for something that goes bad. I am a firm believer in the smell test for most products. Like if it looks good, it smells good, it's probably okay. Like there are a few exceptions to that. Like it's always mentioned in the FDA site. Infant formula is obviously one of those things that you don't want to use past its date. But other than that, like you're gonna be good.
Awesome. So it's 12:58. Do we have one last question, or do we want to wrap it up?
Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
My headphones stopped working. I just want to mention that we are giving away the people who signed up and those who asked questions. So you'll be hearing from me if you are one of the winners after this call. So thanks.
Yes. Thank you for everybody for participating, contributing to a great conversation. Kate, that was fantastic. We can't wait for your next book. We'll have another discussion, fast fashion, or whatever the topic may be. Hillary did such a good job. You have much better words than I do, so I'm really grateful that you did this. And thanks again, everybody. And this has been recorded. It will be available on our website, and I will email you the link to the recording in the next couple of days.